seeing that life for a long time. Getting this money, trying to stay, trying to stay about the light, about the spotlight, the club, and all that kind of stuff, man. Trying to hide, trying to. But it's all fake. Understand what I'm saying? This life, this game, there ain't no love in it. It don't love you back.
No, I feel you, A. I do, man.
The Art of Decision-Making featuring Ace Boogie. The art of decision-making requires a high form of intelligence and is pivotal in one's life. This is because just by making the wrong decisions in your life can result in the most tragic of situations, such as death, or a high magnitude of abundance with the right ones. I'm sure you have either witnessed in your own life or in the lives of others around you how detrimental the consequences of making the wrong decisions have been. Life is about trial and error, and success and failure, so it is important to note that it is almost impossible to always make the correct decisions. So while we want to strive to make the correct decisions most of the time, we must also realize that we will make the wrong ones at some points in our lives. We just have to ensure that when this happens, we learn from those decisions. Part of making the right decisions involves being very calculative and methodical to give you the best chances of being correct and refraining from being impulsive or hasty, as most of the time you end up regretting those types of decisions. Usually these decisions are based on emotion, which most of the time leads us to suffer horrible consequences. Even when you take a look at serial killers versus one-time murderers, you will notice that serial killers tend to have multiple murders before they are finally caught, compared to murderers who simply may have killed someone out of impulsivity due to anger. Part of the reason is because of the serial killer's calculative and methodical nature in planning out their murders to some degree compared to one-time murderers, and also because of a key trait that the character we will be doing an overview of had that you will also want to adopt in your life to be a better decision maker. This is the ability to rationalize between decisions that bring instant gratification versus those that bring delayed gratification. Ace Boogie is an interesting character from the movie Paid in Full, who throughout the movie shows why he has high levels of intelligence and makes the correct decisions time and time again, as he understands the art of being calculative, methodical, and being able to read people as well as the environment he's in. He is also good at realizing the difference between immediate gratification and delayed gratification. These are the traits that make him probably the most intelligent character in the movie, and the reason why he ends up making it out of the drug game in one piece, although he had to go through some bumps and bruises along the way. So, we're going to go over a quick synopsis of the movie and break down key moments in which Ace displays his intelligence in his decision-making, which we can learn from and implement in our own lives. Ace was a young man living in Harlem who worked a low-paying job at a dry cleaner's. Meanwhile, his sister's boyfriend, Calvin, was a drug dealer who made a ton of money, and his close friend Mitch was also doing the same thing. Calvin and Mitch were living a very promising life from the surface, which consisted of easy, high amounts of money, cars, and women. Ace insisted that he'd rather live a law-abiding life, despite the fact that he knew it wouldn't land him the lifestyle that he was witnessing his close friend Mitch have. The obvious reason he didn't want to be part of that lifestyle was because of the consequences, which were jail or death. However, there is an underlying reason within Ace's character that he tries to keep throughout the movie and even tries to install in his workers and one of the other main characters, Rico. He is successful throughout many parts of the movie at doing this. However, due to being part of a lifestyle that inevitably attracts attention, it is very hard to maintain, and that is trying to keep a low profile. For Ace, this is mainly part of his character as a person. However, it is still a trait that can be learned and perfected in the art of decision-making because, at the end of the day, it is a decision to remain humble, calm, and unseen unless necessary. See, Ace wanted to upgrade his lifestyle, which is fine as we all want to live a more than comfortable lifestyle. However, he didn't want the extra baggage of being too flashy, showboating, and being unnecessarily seen by the world, especially when you add in the fact that he'd be making his money illegally. He wasn't aware at first that being flashy and having a lot of attention were not synonymous with selling drugs until he met Lulu. When he met Lulu and Lulu showed him that this wasn't the case, he made the decision to start drug dealing. He was even fooled by Lulu's appearance, as he thought Lulu was a legit law-abiding citizen, and when Lulu informed him that he was a supplier of drugs, He was startled, but happy at the same time, as this was the confirmation he needed to make the decision to start drug dealing. Also, Calvin going to jail added even more motivation to Ace, as he wouldn't have any competition. This is an important concept to realize and implement within your own life, as Ace tried to do with his, as we live in a world today where everyone is fixed on being seen by everyone and getting lots of attention. What's interesting is that some of the richest people in the world are hardly seen. Many of us can't even name them or haven't seen them online or in public settings in literally our whole lives, yet the people who we believe to be really rich are the ones that are displayed to us. For example, rich entertainers or athletes cover our screens every day, and we view them as extremely wealthy, which they are in their own right. However, what about the person that is paying them, or the people that own the sports teams that some of these players play for? The employer has to make more than the employee for things to work, so if someone like LeBron James gets paid $1 million, for example, then how much does the owner of the team he plays for make? Yet we all know LeBron James, but do we know his employer? Even in the movie, with Mitch being flashy and looking like he probably makes more than Ace, at one point in the movie he has to ask Ace to borrow him money when he loses a bet with Rico, as he misses his shot trying to get his rubbish in the bin. This very trait that Ace has of being low profile, humble and focused is a huge reason why he is more intelligent than his friends and everyone around him. When you adopt this trait, you become more focused and more self-oriented, as you are less worried about other people's thoughts and opinions. Your focus doesn't wander into other distractions as it remains on your goals and ambitions, which enables you to plan properly ahead, like Ace showcased throughout the movie. When you become more flashy and focused on attention, you become more outwardly driven, which is never a good thing as you are being led by your pride and ego. When you are led by your pride and ego, you make worse decisions that may even seem good at first, but the later can come back to haunt you, as we see with Rico when he ends up killing Mitch for his money. This leads to the breaking down of Ace, showing his ability to discern correctly when making decisions based on instant gratification versus delayed gratification. We see from the very first scene in the movie, which is actually a flash forward of what happens towards the end of the movie, that Ace is very thoughtful in his decision-making. Ace, Mitch and Rico were at the table eating food when Rico challenged him to a bet to make a shot into the trash can for $5,000. Ace quickly refuses the bet, and Rico says that Ace is always trying to save his money, insinuating that he avoids spending when possible. On the other hand, Mitch accepts the bet, and while he makes the first shot, Rico challenges him again with a double or nothing bet, which Mitch loses and now owed Rico $10,000. You see the difference between Ace and his friends, Rico and Mitch, as Ace is more thoughtful, while Rico and Mitch are more ruled by their greed. Ace's thoughtfulness ensured he didn't land himself in an unnecessary debt, unlike his best friend Mitch, who could have won $5,000 but due to his greed, all of a sudden owed Rico $10,000. What's more ironic is that Mitch had to ask Ace to borrow him $10,000 to pay his debt, with Ace giving him half. So the person who is frowned upon for appearing to refrain from spending much of his money is the one who is mostly asked for help whenever a person has a financial issue. This is an important lesson to learn, as being thoughtful and less hasty with your expenditures may lead you to be judged by your peers, but these may be the same people that come to you for favors in the long run due to their hastiness in their financial decision-making. The lesson here is to not focus too much on others' perceptions of you, especially if it is in an area that they are not entirely equipped in themselves. This is the first example of Ace showing his high level of discernment. Now here are some examples of Ace making decisions based on delayed gratification. Firstly, what is instant gratification and delayed gratification? Instant gratification refers to the temptation and tendency to neglect a future benefit in order to obtain a less rewarding but more immediate benefit. Delayed gratification is the opposite, resisting the urge to get an immediate, less rewarding benefit in order to obtain a more rewarding benefit later. An example would be buying food from a shop because you are hungry right now, although you are not the biggest fan of the food you're going to buy. This is instant gratification, as opposed to waiting until you get home so that you can make the food that you really like as well as save money. This is delayed gratification. When Ace finds Coke in Lulu's pocket of his shirt, which he took from him to dry clean, he had a decision to make. At this stage, he was already thinking about the idea of starting to deal drugs, so he could have just stolen it and sold it. He was also given extra money by Lulu just for taking his clothes to dry clean in the first place. Ace already had the idea that Lulu was very wealthy, so while taking the drug and selling it would have made him instant money, he knew that he could have instead returned it and be rewarded better much later, as Lulu could have been an important person to network with, which he ended up being. Because of this small act, Ace gained Lulu's respect and trust, which eventually led to Lulu introducing him to the game of drug dealing. On top of that, Lulu gave it to him anyway, so Ace was still able to sell it. If Ace had just taken the coke he found in his pocket, which most people would have done, he may not have had the connection he established with Lulu. This is why the ability to think long-term and not be blinded by immediate pleasures is very important when making decisions, as symbolized by Ace. Ace shows his ability to delay rewards again when he goes to Lulu's apartment and finds him dead on the floor. He stumbles into a lot of drugs and expensive diamonds, which again, he could have taken and sold. But then what would he have done when the drugs finished, as Lulu was his connect? Instead, he showed his ability to think more long-term and strategically by going to the shop where Lulu used to meet up with his plug and attempted to strike a deal to go into business with him. He even used more tactical thinking by lowering the plug's guard by giving him all the drugs he found and some of the diamonds he found to show that he was genuine and had no hidden agenda. At this stage in the movie, Ace is coming to the plug as Lulu's friend, so the plug and his associates are going to sense a high level of threat, as at that moment, Ace could try and seek revenge for Lulu's death. Although this wasn't Ace's plan, he knew that the plug didn't know him, so would be very cautious when dealing with him, hence, he gave him the drugs and diamonds as a means to show his desire to do proper business with no ulterior motives. Ace, in fact, used Law 13 of the 48 Laws of Power in his quest to build a connection with the plug, which is, when asking for help, appeal to the self-interests of others, never to their mercy or gratitude. He appealed to the plug's self-interests by giving him the drugs and diamonds he found at Lulu's house, to the point where he sarcastically asked him if he thought it was his birthday.
So let me get this straight. You just gonna give me all this stuff. Why? I mean, it's not my birthday.
You know what I'm saying? I sold a lot for him. You know what I mean? And, maybe we go on.
Ace really needed his help, but instead of going empty-handed and begging, he instead enticed him with something he knew he would be interested in, and I believe this is what really made the plug decide to do business with him. This is a lesson you must learn when dealing with others. Think about how you can help them when in need of their help, as this is what will make them more than likely help you. Most people today find it hard to delay any sort of reward and want things as soon as possible. Hence, they will be unable to be consistent with anything unless it provides immediate rewards. If you are someone who is unable to sacrifice things that seem pleasing now for better things later, then you will find it a lot harder to attain any real rewarding success, as such things require a prolonged period of hard work. Studies even show that the ability to delay rewards is present in highly successful people. Most people want to do little to no work yet receive a fulfilling reward, or they desire the type of life they see successful people having, yet are unwilling to do the work to get there when this is not how life works. To be successful or to get far ahead in life requires you to be able to think long-term sometimes, and not just in the here and now, which most of the people in the movie display apart from Ace, which is a key reason why not only is he successful in the drug game, but also why he managed to escape alive with money. Towards the end of the movie, Ace displayed not only his high intelligence but also his ability to learn from his mistakes very quickly, as he did make a huge mistake in his decision-making when in an intense situation. However, he learned from this mistake very quickly and showed he had learned when his best friend Mitch died. This mistake was made when Calvin robbed him in his home and shot him in the head, causing him to nearly die. The mistake Ace made was blowing Calvin's cover, as Calvin didn't want Ace to know that it was him that was robbing him. Because Ace was at the top of the food chain at this point in the movie, Calvin obviously knows that if Ace knew it was him attempting to rob him, he'd be a dead man on the streets, as many people would be after him. For that reason, after Ace blew his cover, Calvin felt he had no choice but to kill him so that no one would find out he was the one who robbed Ace. Luckily, Ace survived the gunshot to his head, as this was a lesson Ace would never forget, which he demonstrated later in the movie. He utilized one of the 48 laws of power from then on, which is, always say less than necessary. Although he always utilized this law throughout the movie, he failed to use it at one of the most important times of his life. However, after that incident, he quickly reverted back to using this law. In the art of decision-making, you always want to utilize this law as Ace did, as the more you speak, the more likely you are to end up saying something foolish. By keeping silent or controlling carefully what you reveal, you wield great power. The silences you leave with people will be filled up by them revealing more information about their own intentions and weaknesses. Ace said too much by blowing Calvin's cover instead of keeping this information to himself. Later in the movie, when confronting Rico regarding Mitch's death, he then utilized this law perfectly, which I think is the most educational part of the movie when dealing with the art of decision-making, as Ace demonstrated his intelligence best during this part of the movie, utilizing so much of what he learned throughout the movie just in this one scene. When Ace came out of the hospital after Calvin had shot him, he was speaking with Mitch and Rico, informing them that he intended to leave the game. He decided that now that he had just become a father and had made enough money from the drug game, it was a good time to leave so that he could focus on his family, as he knew that the life in which he was involved rarely tends to end well, especially if staying in it too long.
I'm out, Rico. You understand what I'm saying? Look at me. I've been shot in the head, baby. My body different. I'm breathing different. You understand what I'm saying? The doctor said I wasn't gonna walk the same. You understand what I'm saying? I'm out.
This in itself shows his intelligence. As for most people, it would be difficult, as the amount of money one can make in the drug game would entice most people to stay. Ace, however, utilized Law 47 in the 48 Laws of Power, which is don't go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. Time and time again, people get carried away with success and believe that this phase will last forever, becoming blind to everything else. Being victorious or very successful is great, but what you have to realize is that during this time, you are most susceptible to new enemies. Sometimes you will create enemies you don't even know exist, as people will always want to strip you of your success. This is why it is important to realize that whenever you reach your desired goal, you have the ability to stop and maybe instead create a new goal or start a new journey. The moment you achieve success is when you are most vulnerable. More often than not, you start to become complacent, overconfident, and arrogant, which blinds you to all potential enemies that want to take your success away from you. Ace realized this as he was on top, and after being on the receiving end of a robbery, he knew that there was the potential for many more, and he couldn't afford to have that as he had family, so he decided to call it quits. Now let's go back to when Ace utilized the law of saying less than necessary when confronting Rico about Mitch's death. Ace gave Mitch a load of keys to sell so that he could make the money to pay off the person who was holding his son for ransom. However, when Mitch met Rico later in the evening to explain why he had that amount of drugs, Rico saw this as an opportunity to not only rob Mitch of the drugs but also kill him in the process. By doing this, he could now sell them and take the money for himself. Remember when we spoke about instant gratification versus delayed gratification? This was an example of a less intelligent person in Rico who needed instant gratification, which meant taking all the keys for himself, even at the expense of killing a friend. Now, if he hadn't done this, he could have helped Mitch sell the drugs and then been introduced to Ace's plug and run the empire with Mitch that Ace had created, meaning he would have made more money over a longer period of time. Instead, he was unable to look that far ahead and made the mistake of killing Mitch, which he later paid for. This is the difference between making decisions now for an instant hit or delaying them for a more fulfilling reward later. Ace continuously showed why being able to delay small rewards for a larger reward later is better, which you should learn from and implement if you are trying to be successful on your own journey. Sometimes the need to have things now is what lures us into seeking out things that bring instant gratification. However, as the quote goes, nothing worth having ever comes easy. Ace knew when Mitch died that Rico was the one behind it, as he knew Mitch was meant to see him the evening of his death. However, Ace needed confirmation. He knew Rico wouldn't just tell him, and he also knew that going to Rico and just unleashing the fact that he knew he had committed the murder would also be a bad idea, as Rico would probably attempt to kill him too. So instead, he decided to set up Rico with undercover feds by using Rico's own greed against him. Before Ace finally made this decision, he asked Rico questions when they met up. These were questions that would confirm to Ace that Rico was the one who killed Mitch. He asked him if he saw Mitch that night, knowing that Mitch said he was, and Rico replied he hadn't seen him all day.
You talked to Mitch yesterday?
I ain't talked to Mitch and see that nigga the whole goddamn day yesterday, B.
This was Ace's first confirmation. He noticed the scratchings on his face that Mitch had done and asked Rico where they came from, with Rico replying that they came from a girl he was with that night.
Hey, what happened to your face, man?
What?
I said, what happened to your face?
This shit. Fucking with this wild-ass bitch last night. Nah, I play, B.
He then asked if he recorded them having sex, as this is what Rico normally does, and Rico replied no.
Wow, boy, you wild motherfucker, man.
Yeah.
You videotape that shit?
Think you know me and shit, man. I ain't taped that shit last night, B.
These answers are what confirmed to Ace what he had already known, which then led to him setting up Rico by informing him of a link that he wanted him to go to sell drugs in which Rico could take a majority of the profit. He knew that the idea of making a large sum of money would be so desirable to Rico that he wouldn't even suspect Ace of having ulterior motives. The link, however, was the undercover feds that, throughout the movie, were trying to do business with Ace refusing due to being suspicious of their motives. In the end, he was right, as they were feds, and pulling out this tactical card by using them to lead Rico into his own demise was a perfect move to not only get Rico to be the one to take the rap for everything he's been part of, but also get out of the drug game with his hands clean. Ace hit more than 2 birds with 1 stone because firstly, he knew Rico wouldn't snitch, as he had a high amount of pride, and although Rico did snitch on a couple of people from the other side of Harlem, he didn't snitch on Ace. So in actuality, he made Rico end up being the one who was a snitch. By doing this, he also got Rico out of his life, as he knew Rico was a liability who would probably end up turning on him, especially if he was willing to turn on Mitch. He could have easily just killed Rico, as he even brought a gun with him the day he met up with him. However, he would have risked his freedom, which he was trying to keep. So it would have been a bad decision, which shows he had a high level of self-control and thoughtfulness in his decisions. It is important to not become blinded by rage in these situations and make decisions that you later regret and are unable to reverse. Hence, this video is about the art of decision-making. Making the right decisions is so important to the type of life you end up having, which is seen so evidently in this final part of the movie. There are 2 things Ace did with Rico that you should learn from when dealing with the outside world. Firstly, he used Law 21 of the 48 Laws of Power, which is play a sucker to catch a sucker. Appear dumber than your mark. As intelligent as he is, he never tried to make people feel stupid or make fun of them, including Rico. Ace is quite evidently smarter than Rico, but in this scene, he makes Rico feel smarter than him by not revealing that he knows he killed Mitch. Instead, he keeps that to himself and grants Rico the chance to make even more money with the setup he had in place. At this moment in the movie, Rico felt as if he had outsmarted Ace, as he felt he got away with his actions and fell right into Ace's trap. Once a person feels they are smarter than you, they will never suspect that you have any ulterior motives, which was the case for Ace and Rico. This is why in Proverbs 12:23 it states, "The wise don't make a show of their knowledge, but fools broadcast their foolishness." You should always refrain from the idea that you have to seem so great and knowledgeable to everyone, and instead become more prudent and reserved, allowing the fools to take center stage. Secondly, Ace used one of the methods in the 33 strategies of war, which is, give your rivals enough rope to hang themselves. Ace knew that Rico was a very rash and impulsive character who often doesn't quite think things through. So he knew that by planning the right strategy to eliminate Rico from his life, Rico would follow his plan all the way to the end and execute himself by getting arrested with all the drugs he had on him. Ace was able to play on Rico's own self-destructive tendencies by setting him up, knowing Rico wouldn't even question his plans due to his impulsiveness. Part of being intelligent and making good decisions is knowing how to study the behavior of everyone, whether they are friends, colleagues, or enemies. This is not because you necessarily want to do anything bad to people, but it's more of a way to defend yourself from being attacked by others, because if you know a person's tendencies and behavior patterns, they are less likely to surprise you with anything they attempt to do towards you. However, in this example, This is someone using it to eliminate someone else, which you could argue was justified at that moment in time. It is important to understand duality, which is that while we want to live a peaceful, drama-free life, we will undoubtedly face battles along the way, unless you live by yourself isolated from the world. And it is only a fool who makes himself unprepared for something that is inevitable. And while we want to help and be peaceful with everyone, as the book states, never interfere with an enemy that is in the process of committing suicide. Not everyone wants to learn, and some people have to face severe consequences in their own lives for them to learn, so it would be unwise of you to think you can save everyone. By trying to rescue someone who doesn't want to be rescued, you will also suffer from their fate. Now, the final lesson to learn from Ace when dealing with the art of decision-making is how the movie ends. Ace showed that he has the ability to make good short-term decisions, but in the end, he also showed that he was able to make decisions thinking far ahead. And this decision was to keep some of the diamonds he found in Lulu's house for himself and use them as a down payment on his new life away from the drug game. This decision was part of his exit strategy, showing that he always knew he wouldn't be involved in that life forever, no matter how desirable it may have been. He showed a trait that you must also implement when pursuing any goal or mission in your life, and that is one of the 48 laws of power, which is plan all the way to the end. Most people are too trapped by their emotions in the moment to see far ahead and end up making rash, temporary decisions without thinking about the consequences. You must not be like this, and instead think things through and plan in detail before you act upon things. Even in the scene prior, when Ace sets up Rico, he had brought a gun with him just in case, and although he never intended to use it, he made sure he brought it so that he was prepared for all outcomes. This is what it means to plan to detail. Have a plan, and also have a plan for if that plan doesn't work, as life is full of surprises. And definitely do not make hasty decisions that are irreversible, as they can have you facing serious consequences that you could have avoided if you had just thought and planned more carefully. Ace's end goal was always to leave the drug game, meaning that he had to have an exit strategy. Sometimes you may not particularly know when exactly that time will come, but at least ensure that you are prepared, and this is what Ace did by keeping some of the diamonds he found in Lulu's house without telling anyone about it. Ace's character depicts a person who has high intelligence and is able to make great decisions. He used great strategies and made a lot of chess moves in his decision-making, which is why I used him as an example of someone who has almost mastered the art of decision-making. His decision-making is what led him to have a good run in a field that sees many dead at the end, and he was able to leave with a lot. Just by mastering the art of decision-making will put you ahead of others in life, which you will always benefit from.